The crystal towers of Valari Prime sparkled in the light of 3 suns. For 10,000 years, these beautiful structures had stood as symbols of peace and trade across the galaxy. Today, they shook with fear. Commander Zethka pressed his translucent hands against the communication console. His crystalline body, normally a calm blue color, flickered with red streaks of panic. Around him, other Valari officials moved with desperate speed, their crystal forms chiming like broken bells. "The Kethvar have taken the Outer Rim," reported Subcommander Lithna, her voice creating musical tones that the universal translator converted to words. 7 worlds in 3 days. They're consuming everything. Zethka's crystal body dimmed. The Kethvar swarm was everything the Valari were not. Where the Valari were peaceful traders, the Kethvar were hungry destroyers. Where the Valari built beautiful cities, the Kethvar left only empty worlds, stripped of all life. "Have the Altarian Defense Corps responded?" Zethka asked. "They say, the cost is too high," Lithna replied. "The Zenthan Empire calls it unfortunate but not their concern. Even the Galactic Council says they cannot spare ships." Zethka felt his inner light grow dim. Across the galaxy, there were hundreds of powerful civilizations, ships of war, armies of soldiers, weapons that could destroy planets, but none would help. The Valari had always solved problems with trade agreements and peaceful talks. They had no armies, no weapons of war, no knowledge of how to fight. "Sir," called another voice. "The emergency beacon is ready." Zethka looked at the massive transmitter that his people had built in their final hours of hope. It would send their message to every corner of known space. Every civilization would hear their cry for help. "Send it to everyone," he said. "Even to the forbidden zones." "Sir? The quarantine systems? But those contain Deathworlders," Zethka finished. "Yes, send it everywhere. If the civilized galaxy will not help us, perhaps someone else will." The message began to travel faster than light, reaching across the stars. "This is Commander Zethka of the Valari Trade Confederation. Our worlds are under attack by the Kethvar swarm. We are a peaceful people with no weapons of war. Millions will die without help. We offer everything we have to anyone who will stand with us. Please, someone, anyone, help us." Far from the beautiful crystal cities in a system marked with warning symbols on every galactic map, the message reached Earth. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the human battleship Indomitable. Outside the windows, Earth hung like a blue and green jewel. But this Earth was different from the peaceful world most species imagined. This was a planet that had tried to kill everything on it for billions of years. Hurricanes that could level cities, earthquakes that split continents, volcanoes that changed the climate, animals that hunted other animals for food, diseases that jumped between species, ice ages that froze entire continents. And through it all, humans had not just survived, they had learned to fight back. "Admiral," called Communications Officer Martinez. "We're getting a distress signal. It's pretty bad." Chen was a tall woman with dark hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. Her brown eyes had seen combat on worlds where the air itself was poison. She had fought pirates in asteroid belts where one small mistake meant death. In the cold of space. "Put it on screen," she said. The image of Commander Zethka appeared. Even through the universal translator, his fear was clear. The beautiful crystal being shook as he begged for help. "The Kethvar swarm," whispered Lieutenant Jackson, who stood beside Chen. "I've read about them in the intelligence reports. They strip entire worlds bare. Eat everything living." "How many ships do they have?" Chen asked. "Thousands, ma'am. Maybe tens of thousands. They breed their ships like insects breed young, fast and hungry." Chen studied the star charts. The Valari system was far from Earth at the edge of known space. It would take weeks to get there, and the human fleet was small compared to the great armadas of the galaxy. But the galaxy's great armadas were not coming. "Ma'am," said Jackson, "Command says this isn't our fight. The Valari never helped us when the galaxy put Earth under quarantine. They called us dangerous Deathworlders like everyone else." Chen remembered those days. After first contact, when the galaxy learned that humans came from a world of constant danger, they had been afraid. Humans were too aggressive, too willing to fight, too dangerous to be allowed into civilized space. For 50 years, Earth had been alone. The humans had not wasted those years. They had built ships, they had trained soldiers, they had learned to turn their violent world into their greatest strength. The Valari called us Deathworlders, Chen said slowly. Maybe it's time we showed the galaxy what Deathworlders can do. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Valari Prime, tell them help is coming. Ma'am, what should we tell our own command? Chen smiled. It was not a gentle smile. It was the smile of a predator that had found prey. Tell them that some fights are worth having. Tell them that sometimes the monsters need to be reminded who the real monsters are. Around Earth, the human war fleet began to move. These were not the sleek, beautiful ships of the civilized galaxy. They were built like their creators, tough, practical, and ready for violence. Weapons covered their hulls like thorns on a rose. Their engines burned with the power of contained stars. 12 battleships, 40 cruisers, hundreds of smaller ships filled with human soldiers who had trained in environments that would kill most galactic citizens in minutes. The Kethvar had never fought Deathworlders before. They had consumed the gentle Valari, the peaceful Altarians, the soft civilized species who solved problems with words and trade agreements. They were about to learn what happened when you threatened something a human wanted to protect. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Admiral Chen stood in her quarters looking at a picture of Earth, her homeworld, where everything tried to kill you and somehow made you stronger for surviving it. Computer, she said. Record a personal. Recording, Admiral. We're about to do something that the galaxy thinks is impossible. We're going to fight the Kethvar swarm and win. Not because we have the biggest ships or the most advanced technology, but because we're human. Because we learned to fight on a world that never stopped trying to kill us. Because when someone needs help, you help them. That's what people do. She paused, still looking at Earth. The galaxy fears us because we come from a death world. They're about to learn that there's something they should fear more than Deathworlders. What's that, Admiral? Asked the computer's artificial intelligence. Chen's smile returned, sharp and dangerous. Deathworlders who have something to protect. The human fleet vanished into hyperspace, carrying with it the fury of Earth and the hope of the Valari. Across the galaxy, sensors detected their movement. In the halls of power, beings whispered that the humans were finally coming out of their quarantine. Some called it foolish. Some called it impossible. None of them called it what it really was. It was the beginning of the hunt. The space around Valari Prime filled with lights as the human fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 12 massive battleships appeared first, their dark hulls covered with weapon systems that made the watching Valari shiver. Behind them came smaller ships, but even the smallest human vessel carried more guns than most civilized species put on their largest warships. Commander Zethka stood in his crystal tower, watching the alien fleet deploy in perfect formation. His translucent body flickered between hope and terror. Help had come, but it came in the form of the galaxy's most feared species. They're big, whispered Sub-Commander Lithna beside him. I never imagined Deathworlders would build such massive ships. The human ships were nothing like the elegant vessels of civilized space. Where Valari ships curved like art pieces and Altarian vessels gleamed like jewels, human ships looked like weapons that happened to have engines attached. They were dark, angular, and covered with more guns than should fit on any reasonable spacecraft. A communication signal reached the tower. The universal translator crackled to life and a human face appeared on screen. Admiral Sarah Chen looked exactly like the stories said Deathworlders would look. Tall, with hard eyes and visible scars. Her uniform was practical rather than beautiful, and her expression was that of someone who had seen combat and won. Commander Zethka, she said, her voice steady and calm. I'm Admiral Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. We received your distress signal. Zethka's crystal body chimed nervously as he bowed in the Valari manner. Admiral, we are grateful beyond words, but, forgive me, we had hoped for help from the Galactic Council or perhaps the Zenthan Defense Corps. We did not expect Deathworlders? Chen's mouth moved in what Zethka had read was called a smile, though it looked more like a predator showing teeth. The Galactic Council decided your problem was too expensive. We decided it was our kind of fight. How many ships do you have? Asked Lithna. Enough, Chen replied. We're deploying field hospitals on your remaining worlds and setting up refugee centers. My Marines are already establishing defensive perimeters around your population centers. Zethka felt his crystal form brighten with hope, then dim again, with worry. Admiral, the Kethvar have thousands of ships. They move like a swarm of insects, consuming everything. Even your impressive fleet will be more than sufficient, Chen interrupted. Commander, You've been fighting the Kethvar, the way civilized species fight wars. With honor, with rules, with the expectation that your enemy will behave reasonably. She leaned forward, and her eyes seemed to look right through the communication screen into Zethka's crystal core. We're not civilized. We're from Earth. On Earth, everything tries to kill you from the moment you're born. The weather, the animals, the plants, the bacteria, sometimes even the ground under your feet. We learned to fight back against all of it, and we got very, very good at killing things that want to kill us. As if to prove her point, the human fleet began to deploy in a way that made no sense to the watching Valari. Instead of forming defensive lines around the Valari worlds, they spread out in hunting formations. Small groups of ships moved toward the outer system, looking for trouble. Admiral, Zethka said carefully, perhaps it would be wise to wait and study the enemy before. Alarms began to sound in the crystal tower. Long-range sensors had detected movement at the edge of the system. Kethvar ships, dropping out of hyperspace like deadly rain. 50 Kethvar vessels incoming, reported a Valari sensor operator. They're heading straight for the fourth planet. Zethka expected the humans to form defensive positions, to call for reinforcements, to do what civilized species did when faced with overwhelming numbers. Instead, Admiral Chen smiled wider. Perfect timing, she said. All ships, this is Chen. We have customers. Remember, we're not here to drive them off, we're here to hunt them down. The nearest human ships turned toward the incoming Kethvar vessels, but instead of waiting for them to attack the planets, the human ships accelerated directly toward the enemy. They're attacking, gasped Lithna, against 50 ships. No, said Zethka, watching the tactical display with growing amazement. They're hunting. The human ships moved like pack hunters from ancient Earth stories. 3 battleships formed the center, drawing Kethvar attention with massive gun barrages. Meanwhile, smaller human vessels slipped around the flanks, moving faster than anything that size should be able to move. The Kethvar ships were living things, grown rather than built. They looked like massive insects with weapons grafted onto their shells. They had always won through numbers, swarming their enemies until resistance collapsed. But humans had learned to fight swarms on their homeworld. They knew how to break up group tactics and turn numbers into a disadvantage. The first Kethvar ship died when a human cruiser fired something the Valari had only heard about in frightened whispers. A nuclear missile used as a ship-to-ship weapon. The explosion lit up space like a new star. They're using atomic weapons in space combat, breathed the sensor operator. Civilized species stopped doing that thousands of years ago. Civilized species never had to fight for their lives every day, replied Zethka, understanding beginning to dawn on him. The battle was unlike anything the Valari had ever seen. Human ships didn't try to disable their enemies or force them to surrender. They killed them quickly and efficiently, then moved on to the next target. Their weapons were brutal and direct. Kinetic rounds that punched through Kethvar bioarmor, plasma cannons that cooked the living ships from inside, and those terrible nuclear warheads that turned enemy vessels into expanding clouds of radioactive gas. But it wasn't just the weapons that amazed the watching Valari. It was the way the humans fought. They worked together like they had been born, each ship knowing exactly where the others would be. They took risks that would terrify civilized species, gambling their lives on split-second timing and perfect coordination. In 20 minutes, all 50 Kethvar ships were dead. Admiral Chen's face reappeared on the communication screen. She looked completely calm, as if annihilating 50 enemy ships was something she did every day. Commander Zethka, we're going to need detailed information about Kethvar fleet movements and breeding worlds. My intelligence teams are setting up on your command station. Of course, Admiral, but how did you do that? 50 ships? We're 50 targets, Chen replied simply. Commander, your people have been thinking of the Kethvar as an unstoppable force of nature. We think of them as a pest problem that needs to be solved. She paused, looking at something off-screen. My scouts report 3 more Kethvar fleets approaching from different directions. Several hundred ships total. They're probably coming to investigate what happened to their advance force. Zethka's crystal body went dim with fear. Several hundred ships. We'll make for good hunting, Chen finished. Don't worry, Commander. We brought enough ammunition. As the communication ended, Zethka stood in his crystal tower and watched human ships move through space like sharks through dark water. All around Valari space they were taking positions not to defend but to hunt. The Kethvar had spent millennia consuming civilized species who fought wars with honor and restraint. They were about to meet Deathworlders who fought wars to win, and, on Earth, evolution had taught humans a very simple lesson. When something tries to eat you, you kill it first. The HFY were about to learn that lesson the hard way. The HFY hive ship was the size of a small moon, its living hull pulsing with the rhythm of a massive heart. Bioluminescent patches across its surface glowed like infected wounds, and thousands of smaller ships swarmed around it like parasites, around their host. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, studying the enemy through tactical displays. Her officers moved around her with quiet efficiency, preparing weapons and coordinating with the rest of the human fleet. "Sensor analysis complete, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Jackson. "The hive ship contains approximately 2 billion HFY drones. It's growing more ships from its internal biofactories." 2 billion, whispered Commander Zethka through the communication link from Valari Prime. His crystal body flickered with terror. "Admiral, perhaps we should wait for more ships. Contact the Galactic Council again." "The Galactic Council had their chance," Chen replied, not taking her eyes off the massive enemy vessel. "Besides, 2 billion enemies just means we don't have to hunt for targets." Around the bridge, human officers smiled. They were the children of a world where surviving meant being tougher than everything else. The HFY numbers didn't scare them. It just meant the fight would be interesting. "Ma'am," called the weapons officer, "we're getting signals from other fleets. 12 different species are monitoring this engagement from long range. They want to see how Deathworlders fight." Chen's smile turned sharp. "Then let's give them something to remember. All ships, attack formation Alpha. We're going into the middle of that swarm." The watching civilizations expected the humans to use long-range weapons to stay back and try to destroy the hive ship from a safe distance. That's what civilized species would do. Instead, the human fleet accelerated directly toward the swarm, weapons blazing. The Indomitable led the charge, her massive guns firing nuclear-tipped missiles that carved burning paths through the HFY defenders. Behind her, human cruisers and destroyers spread out in a spear-point formation, each ship covering the others as they drove deeper into enemy space. The HFY drones swarmed to meet them. Millions of bioships, each one grown for war, each one carrying weapons that could melt through armor or tear apart hull plating. They moved like a living cloud of death, guided by the hive mind that controlled them all. But humans had fought living clouds before. On Earth they had battled swarms of insects, flocks of predatory birds, schools of hungry fish. They knew how to break up group tactics and turn numbers into chaos. "Release the dogs," Chen ordered. From launch bays across the human fleet came something the galaxy had never seen in space combat. Actual attack dogs. Genetically modified Earth canines in specialized spacesuits, trained to hunt in zero gravity. They launched from torpedo tubes like living missiles, their enhanced senses guiding them to HFY command nodes. Behind the dogs came human marines in powered armor, riding one-man assault craft into the heart of the swarm. These weren't the careful civilized soldiers of the galaxy's armies. These were the descendants of Earth's greatest predators, and they had brought their homeworld's ecosystem with them. Combat ravens with cybernetic enhancements dove through the void, their sharp beaks carrying explosive charges. Swarms of modified Earth wasps engineered for vacuum survival infected HFY bioships with viruses that disrupted their nervous systems. And through it all, human soldiers fought with a savagery that shocked the watching civilizations. Marine Sergeant Torres landed on the hull of a HFY drone ship, his armor's magnetic clamps holding him in place as he cut through bioarmor with a plasma torch. Around him, other Marines worked in perfect coordination, placing shaped charges on vulnerable points. "Nervous system cluster located," he reported through his helmet comm. "Planting the package now." The device he placed wasn't just an explosive, it was a modified Earth virus, re-engineered to attack HFY neural tissue. When it detonated, it would spread through the bioship's living systems like a disease, turning the creature's own body against itself. Similar attacks were happening across the swarm. Human combat engineers had studied captured HFY biotechnology and found its weakness. It was all connected. The hive mind that gave them coordination also gave them vulnerability. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Chen watched her tactical display as enemy contacts began disappearing. Not destroyed by weapons, but falling silent as their nervous systems collapsed. "It's working," she said. "The biological warfare is disrupting their coordination." But the real battle was yet to come. The massive hive ship opened like a flower of death, revealing internal chambers the size of cities. From these chambers came something new. HFY Queen Guards, creatures the size of human battleships with armor thick enough to stop nuclear weapons. "Now we're talking," Chen said, All ships target the big ones. Let's see what they're made of. The Queen Guards moved with terrifying grace for something so large. Their bioweapons could melt through the hull of a human cruiser, and their armor had been grown to withstand the greatest weapons of civilized species. But civilized species didn't use kinetic kill vehicles accelerated to near light speed. The human battleship Retribution fired its main gun, a solid tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole, launched by magnetic acceleration at 90% of light speed. When it hit the lead Queen Guard, the impact released more energy than a nuclear bomb. The creature simply ceased to exist. Direct hit, reported the Retribution's captain. Target eliminated. Around the battle, the watching civilizations fell, silent. They had never seen anything destroyed so completely, so efficiently. But the humans weren't finished. Marine Captain Sarah Kim led her boarding team through the breach in the Hive ship's hull, her enhanced armor allowing her to move through environments that would kill unprotected humans in seconds. Behind her, her team carried weapons that most species considered primitive: chemical explosives, projectile weapons, and flamethrowers that burned in vacuum using their own oxygen supply. Remember, she told her Marines through the comm system, these things have never fought someone who fights back. They're used to civilized species who surrender when things get tough. Show them what happens when they mess with Deathworlders. The interior of the Hive ship was a nightmare of living. Corridors and breathing walls. Bioluminescent patches provided sickly light, and the air was thick with spores that would have been toxic to most species. The Marines didn't care. They had trained in worse environments on Earth. Kethvar drones came at them through the living corridors, their claws and bioweapons ready to tear apart the invaders. What they found instead were humans who had learned to fight in close quarters against predators that wanted to eat them. Kim's flamethrower turned the narrow corridor into an inferno. Behind her, Marines Johnson and Park used shotguns loaded with explosive shells to clear out drone clusters. Their weapons were loud, crude, and absolutely devastating in the confined space. Advancing to the neural center, Kim reported as her team fought deeper into the ship. We've got the virus ready for deployment. The virus wasn't designed to kill the Hive ship. It was designed to do something worse, make it think for itself. When Kim's team reached the central nervous cluster and released the modified pathogen, the effect was immediate. Across the massive bioship, individual sections began to act independently. Some parts tried to flee while others continued fighting. The coordination that made the Kethvar dangerous collapsed into chaos. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched as the huge Hive ship began to tear itself apart. Without the Hive mind to coordinate its functions, the living vessel couldn't maintain its basic systems. All ships, pull back to safe distance, she ordered. The big one is going critical. The Hive ship's death was visible across star systems. When its bioreactor finally destabilized, the explosion lit up space like a new star, taking with it the 2 billion drones that had called it home. In the silence that followed, Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the watching fleets. This is Admiral Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Force. To any Kethvar forces monitoring this engagement, you just saw 2 billion of your kind die in less than 3 hours. This was a small engagement for us. We're just getting started. She paused, letting that sink in. To the civilized species observing, now you know why we come from a quarantine zone. Questions? There were no questions. The watching fleets quietly withdrew to safe distances, their commanders trying to process what they had witnessed. The Kethvar, ancient and hungry, had met something they had never encountered before. Predators from a world that had spent 4 billion years perfecting the art of survival through violence, and the predators were just getting warmed up. News of the Hive ship's destruction spread across the galaxy faster than light. In the halls of the Galactic Council, beings who had dismissed the human intervention as foolish suicide now watched tactical recordings with growing amazement and fear. Admiral Chen stood in the command center on Valari Prime, studying holographic displays that showed Kethvar movements across dozens of star systems. Around her, human intelligence officers worked alongside Valari analysts, their combined efforts revealing the true scope of the enemy. The Kethvar are pulling back from their forward positions, reported Commander Zethka, his crystal body now glowing with steady hope instead of flickering panic. Your victory has made them cautious. Not cautious, Chen corrected, pointing to movement patterns on the display. Strategic. Look at these withdrawal routes. They're not retreating randomly. They're consolidating their forces around core breeding worlds. Lieutenant Jackson nodded grimly. Intelligence suggests they're preparing for something big, Admiral. Maybe planning to spawn more queen ships. Chen studied the patterns, her experienced eye reading the flow of enemy ships like a hunter reading animal tracks. No, they're preparing to run. The Queen Mother is getting ready to split the hive. Split it? Asked Zethka. HFY reproductive strategy, explained Dr. Sarah Webb, the human xenobiologist who had joined Chen's staff. When a hive faces extinction, the Queen Mother can divide her consciousness among multiple queens. Each new queen takes part of the swarm and spreads to different galaxies. The implications hit everyone at once. If the HFY escaped to other galaxies, they would spread like a disease across the universe, consuming world after world until there was nothing left. We can't let that happen, Chen said quietly. This isn't just about saving the Volari anymore. We need to end the HFY as a species. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we need everything they can spare, and send word to our allies. Allies, ma'am? Chen smiled. The Fenrari, wolves should be arriving soon, and I think it's time we introduce the galaxy to our artificial intelligence friends. 3 days later, the space around Volari Prime filled with new arrivals. The Fenrari pack ships came first, sleek vessels crewed by the wolf-like beings who had been humanity's first alien friends. The Fenrari had recognized humans as fellow pack hunters and had joined the Terran Federation decades ago. Behind them came something that made even the Volari gasp in wonder. True artificial intelligence constructs, each one a unique personality housed in a purpose-built ship body. These AIs had been created by human engineers and had chosen to serve alongside their organic creators. Admiral, came the synthesized voice of AI Captain Ares 7, speaking from his destroyer-class ship body. I bring greetings from the digital collective. We are ready to hunt. Chen nodded to the tactical display, where the AI's avatar appeared, a shifting pattern of light that somehow conveyed confidence and eagerness for battle. Good to have you with us, Ares. What's our force strength? Combined human, Fenrari, and AI forces now number 412 vessels, Ares replied. Additionally, we have received requests from 17 previously neutral species asking to join our operations. 17 species? Zethka's crystal form chimed with surprise. But the Galactic Council said this war was impossible to win. The Galactic Council was wrong, growled Captain Sharka of the Fenrari pack ship Howling Wind. His wolf-like features showed the same predatory smile that humans wore when they were about to hunt. The soft civilizations fear the swarm because they think like prey. We think like hunters. Chen studied the strategic situation. With their new allies, they had enough force to challenge the HFY directly. But this wouldn't be a simple battle. It would be a hunt across multiple star systems. All right, people, she announced to the combined fleet commanders. The HFY think they can scatter and escape. They're about to learn that pack hunters are very good at running down fleeing prey. The campaign that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The human-led coalition didn't fight, like civilized species, with formal battles and clear objectives. Instead, they hunted like the apex predators they were. Human special forces teams infiltrated HFY breeding worlds, planting viruses that turned the bioships against each other. Fenrari pack ships used their superior speed to cut off escape routes, while AI vessels processed combat data faster than any organic mind could follow. On the bridge of her flagship, Chen coordinated the hunt with the precision of a chess master. Her forces struck at HFY supply lines, communication nodes, and breeding facilities simultaneously, keeping the enemy off balance and unable to mount effective counterattacks. Enemy fleet detected in the Zirian system, reported Ares 7. 300 vessels attempting to establish a new breeding colony. Sharka, take your pack and circle around from the outer system, Chen ordered. Ares, you and your digital friends handle electronic warfare. I'll take the main force straight through the middle. As you command, pack leader, Sharka replied, using the Fenrari term of respect for a superior hunter. The Battle of Zerion was typical of the new warfare. Instead of massive fleet engagements, it was a series of coordinated strikes that left the HFY no chance to organize a defense. When human ships engaged the enemy head-on, Fenrari vessels attacked from unexpected angles while AI ships jammed HFY communications. But the real innovation was psychological warfare. Dr. Webb had discovered that the HFY hive mind could be disrupted by specific sound frequencies and visual patterns. Human ships began broadcasting these patterns during combat, causing confusion and panic among enemy drones. It's working, Webb reported after the Zirian engagement. The HFY are starting to show signs of psychological trauma. They've never faced an enemy that attacks their minds as well as their bodies. But Chen knew they were running out of time. Long-range sensors had detected massive movement in the HFY home system. The Queen Mother was preparing for the final split. How long until she can divide the hive? Chen asked. Based on biorhythms we're detecting, maybe 2 weeks, Webb replied. After that, we'll be facing multiple smaller swarms instead of one big one. Then we end this in 2 weeks, Chen decided. Send word to all allied fleets. We're going to hit them at their home system with everything we have. The final preparations were intense. Human engineers worked with AI constructs to develop new weapons specifically designed to kill hive minds. Fenrari hunters shared tracking techniques that worked across interstellar distances. Even some of the previously neutral species contributed resources and intelligence. Commander Zethka watched the preparations with amazement. His peaceful people had never seen anything like this coordinated effort. The humans had taken a desperate plea for help and turned it into a galaxy-wide coalition against an ancient evil. Admiral, he said to Chen as she reviewed final battle plans. Why are you doing this? Your people could have simply driven the HFY away from our worlds. Why risk everything to destroy them completely? Chen looked up from her tactical displays, her brown eyes serious. Because, Commander, sometimes the only way to protect the innocent is to make sure the monsters can never hurt anyone again. The HFY have been consuming civilizations for thousands of years. If we let them escape, they'll just find new victims. She gestured to the holographic display showing the combined fleet. Every species out there is someone's family, someone's home. The galaxy called us Deathworlders and locked us away because they were afraid of what we might do. Now they're going to see what we do when someone threatens people we've decided to protect. The final battle was 3 days away. In the HFY home system, an ancient Queen Mother prepared to divide her consciousness and spread her hungry children across the universe. She didn't know that Earth's greatest predators were coming for her, and they had no intention of letting her escape. The hunt was almost over. The HFY home system was a monument to hunger. 7 dead worlds orbited a dying red star, their surfaces stripped bare by billions of years of consumption. At the center of this graveyard floated the Queen Mother's world ship, a living planet, covered in biofactories and breeding chambers. Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, watching through reinforced windows as the combined human-led fleet took position. Around the massive flagship, hundreds of Allied vessels formed attack formations that had been perfected through weeks of coordinated hunting. Final sensor sweep complete, Admiral, reported AI Captain RE-7. The Queen Mother's ship contains approximately 50 billion HFY drones. She's also in the final stages of consciousness division. We have maybe 6 hours before she completes the split. 6 hours to end a species, muttered Captain Sharka of the Fenrari, his wolf-like features grim. It seems appropriate that the final hunt should be the most difficult. Chen nodded, studying the tactical displays. The Queen Mother wasn't just a ship, she was a living world, protected by layer after layer of bioships and defended by weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Chen, she broadcast to the combined forces. Today we finish what the HFY started when they decided to consume innocent worlds. Today we prove that predators from Earth don't just survive. We protect others so they can survive too. The attack began with the AI ships, moving faster than organic reflexes could follow. RE-7 and his digital brothers launched a coordinated cyber assault against the HFY biocomputers, flooding their systems with viruses and logic bombs. Electronic warfare is having limited effect, Ares reported. The Queen Mother's mind is too alien for standard disruption techniques. Then we do this the hard way, Chen replied. All ships attack pattern Omega. We're going straight through everything they have. The human fleet charged into the heart of the HFY defenses like a spear thrown by a giant. Nuclear fire lit up space as human weapons carved burning paths through the bioship swarms. Behind them, Fenrari pack ships spread out in hunting formations, while Allied vessels from 17 different species added their firepower to the assault. But the real battle wasn't happening in space. Deep within the Indomitable, Marine Captain Sarah Kim led a team of volunteers toward the ship's most classified section. There, human scientists had been working on humanity's ultimate weapon against hive minds, a modified Earth virus that didn't kill. It gave individuality. Are you sure this will work? Asked Dr. Webb as she handed Kim the bioweapon container. We've only tested it on captured drones. It worked on them, Kim replied, checking her armor seals. Turned them from mindless swarm creatures into individuals who could think for themselves. Some of them even helped us understand HFY biology. The plan was desperate but elegant. Kim and her team would board the Queen Mother's world ship and release the virus into her central nervous system. Instead of killing the 50 billion drones, it would free them from the hive mind's control. "Boarding craft ready," reported the pilot. "Course plotted for the neural center. Remember," Chen's voice came through the comm system. "You don't have to come back. The mission is what matters." Kim smiled behind her helmet. "With respect, Admiral, we're Marines from Earth. We always come back." The boarding craft launched into a storm of bioweapons and defensive fire. Around it, human fighters and Fenrari interceptors cleared a path through the enemy swarms. The small ship twisted and turned through space, its pilot using skills learned in Earth's chaotic atmosphere to navigate the deadly approach. Meanwhile, the main battle raged around the Queen Mother's world ship. Human battleships traded nuclear fire with bioweapons that could melt through armor plating. Fenrari pack ships used hit-and-run tactics against HFY command nodes. AI vessels processed targeting data faster than any organic mind, coordinating the attack with perfect precision. But it was Commander Zethka, watching from his crystal tower on distant Valari Prime, who noticed something the warriors had missed. "Admiral, Chen," he called through the communication link. "The Queen Mother, she's trying to communicate with you directly." On the Indomitable's bridge, the communication console crackled to life. The universal translator struggled with the alien signals, before finally producing words that all the allied species could understand. "Human predator," came the voice of the Queen Mother, "ancient beyond measure and vast beyond comprehension. You fight with the fury of a species that has never known peace. Why do you defend creatures you have never met?" Admiral Chen stepped forward, her image transmitted directly to the living world ship that had consumed countless civilizations. "Because that's what people do," she replied simply. "We help each other survive." The Queen Mother's response carried confusion that rippled through the psychic frequencies. "You are not of one mind. You are billions of separate thoughts, yet you coordinate like a perfect swarm. How is this possible?" "Because we choose to work together," Chen explained. "Every human in this fleet decided to be here. Every AI chose to fight alongside us. Every Fenrari warrior joined our pack by choice. We're not controlled by a hive mind, we're united by something stronger." "What could be stronger than perfect unity of thought?" Chen smiled, the expression carrying both sadness and determination, the choice to care about someone else more than yourself. As if to demonstrate, Kim's boarding craft reached the surface of the world ship. The Marine and her team fought their way through living corridors filled with biodefenses, each step bringing them closer to their target. They could have turned back at any moment, could have chosen their own survival over the mission. Instead, they pressed forward. When Kim finally reached the Queen Mother's central nervous cluster, she found herself in a chamber the size of a cathedral. Organic walls pulsed with the rhythm of a massive heart, and bioluminescent patterns showed the thoughts of 50 billion connected minds. "This is Captain Kim," she reported through her comm system. "I'm at the target, deploying the package, now." The modified virus spread through the Queen Mother's nervous system like liquid fire, but instead of causing death, it brought something the HFY had never experienced: individual thought. Across the world ship, drones suddenly found themselves thinking their own thoughts for the first time. The perfect unity of the hive mind shattered into billions of separate consciousnesses, each one confused and frightened and wonderfully alone. Some kept fighting out of habit. Others simply stopped, overwhelmed by the new experience of being individuals. A few even began helping the human boarding teams, curious about these strange creatures who had given them the gift of independent thought. The Queen Mother herself felt her ancient consciousness fragmenting. For millions of years, she had been one vast mind controlling countless bodies. Now she was just one individual among many, frightened and mortal and free. "What have you done to us?" she asked through the communication link, her voice no longer carrying the weight of billions. "Given you a choice," Admiral Chen replied. "The same choice every human child gets: to decide who you want to be." The battle was over. Without the hive mind to coordinate their actions, the HFY fleet fell into chaos. Most ships simply powered down, their crews too confused by their new individuality to continue fighting. But the real victory was just beginning. In the days that followed, human diplomats and xenobiologists worked with the newly freed HFY to help them understand their situation. Some chose to continue their old ways, but others embraced their new independence. A few even asked to join the growing coalition of species that humans had brought together. The galaxy watched in amazement, as the supposedly unstoppable HFY transformed from a conquering swarm into a collection of individuals learning to make their own choices. The ancient threat that had consumed worlds for millennia was gone, replaced by billions of confused but free beings trying to figure out who they wanted to be. Commander Zethka met Admiral Chen when the human fleet returned to Velari Prime. The crystal being's body glowed with warm light as he bowed in the traditional manner. "Admiral, how can my people ever thank you? You have saved not just our worlds, but countless others across the galaxy." Chen looked tired but satisfied. "No thanks needed, Commander. We did what we came to do." "But you could have taken anything you wanted," Zethka continued. "Your fleet is now the most powerful force in known space. You could rule the galaxy, if you chose to." Chen's expression showed surprise, as if the idea had never occurred to her. "Why would we want to rule the galaxy? We just wanted to make it safe." As the human fleet prepared to depart, offers of alliance came from across known space. Species that had once feared the Deathworlders now asked for their protection. The quarantine around Earth was quietly lifted, and humanity took its place, among the stars not as conquerors but as guardians. The HFY that chose to change became part of this new order, their knowledge of biotechnology helping to heal the worlds they had once consumed. Those that chose to remain hostile found themselves contained on remote worlds, their threat ended by their own inability to work together as individuals. Years later, Admiral Chen would stand in the halls of the new Galactic Council,